Impact segment tonight, reaction to the Talking Points memo. Joining us from Washington, Richard Goodstein, Democratic strategist, and Garland Nixon, radio talk show host, also Democrat. I have to tell the audience, guys, that we gave you the Talking Points memo. We really, we usually don't do that, okay? But because there's so much in it, to be fair, I wanted you guys to read it, maybe take some notes. So, Mr. Nixon, we'll begin with you. Where am I going wrong?
Well, I think where you're going wrong is that, number one, you're kind of interpreting this as a reflection on the Obama administration, and I actually think that it's bigger than that. I think this was really about Hillary Clinton. That if you look at the numbers, the people across the Rust Belt that put Donald Trump over the edge, many of them voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. So they were actually voting for something far different than inclusion. I think it ended up being about money. I think it ended up being about jobs. And the other point I would make is, even when you talk about the poor people in the inner cities who are suffering from crime, et cetera, don't forget, the word is poor there. I think both parties need to look at this election and reflect on the fact that it came down to money, jobs, poverty, income inequality.
All right, but that wasn't my thrust. So maybe Mr. Goodstein. My thrust was the protesters, the people who won't accept the election in the streets. They're screaming that Trump is not inclusive. All right? It wasn't an analysis of why people voted the way they voted. It's what's happening now. Go ahead, Mr. Goodstein.
Well, again, let's start with the premise that Hillary Clinton will end up having gotten millions more votes.
That's just a waste of our time, Mr. Goodstein. Do you have anything on the inclusive stuff or
more
not?
People voted for her. Bill,
so what?
More people will have.
So what?
Okay,
I have better suits than you do. What difference does it make? Stay on the memo.
If Trump, okay, I'm just saying there's a significance to that because you're assuming that somehow there's this majority. I would say
I'm assuming that what I said is correct. More than 60 million Americans voted out the inclusive party. And the protesters are now screaming, you don't want inclusion, when they were never included in the first place. You guys both get this now? Go ahead.
Bill, the reason I think that they're feeling now left out is they're scared. They've actually now gone back and looked at what Donald Trump said. And with regard to all the statistics that you rattled off, they felt included because incomes were up, jobs were up. Healthcare costs actually were down relative to what was projected at the end of the Bush administration.
That's just propaganda, Mr. Goodstein.
No,
Mr. Nixon, let's get back. Mr. Goodstein,
look,
it's just propaganda. Black home ownership is down. Okay, medium income is about flat after 8 years. Don't give me this crap.
Now.
Don't give me
it's up now.
Don't give me the propaganda. I'm not listening to it. Mr. Nixon,
fine.
You want to stay on the memo?
A good way to proceed is not listen to facts.
Okay, and
look,
here's
it's
another
your
thought
propaganda facts, and we're tired of it. Go to what I said. 60 million people are saying we were not included in this inclusive administration. Mr. Nixon, go.
A couple of things. Number one, I think that one of the reasons we're having this issue now with the people out on the street is because they're afraid, right? And to be quite honest, I kind of blame the mainstream media a lot of that for a lot of that. We've had, you know, last year of people in our mainstream media, you know, horrifying, terrifying the people, telling them you have to be afraid of Donald Trump. And I think now Donald Trump's got elected, and now what you have is a mass of terrified people. And I think it was irresponsible all along to do that. I really believe that a lot of the media, which was, let's face it, if you paid attention to the WikiLeaks, a lot of the mainstream media was, you know, kind of under the thumb of the Clinton administration. They were working on her behalf, and they scared everybody, trying to scare them over to her.
I don't disagree with that, but I want to get back to the core thing. Let's focus on these kids who walked out of class in Los Angeles today, okay? Right. They're being told by whomever, their teachers, the administrators, whoever, that this guy, Trump, he didn't like you. He didn't like you because you're Hispanic. He didn't like you because you're black or you're poor, whatever it may be, all right? And you're not included in this Trump administration. So these kids, as you said, and I think that's true, Mr. Nixon, are afraid. They're afraid, oh, no, what's going to happen to me? Go ahead, Mr. Goodstein.
Let me look. Let's give these kids some credit. Let's actually imagine that they kind of were watching the news over the past year, and they heard Bush father and son and Romney and Colin Powell call Trump a racist, bigot, xenophobe, misogynist, and con artist. So you can't really lay this on the mainstream media. Incidentally, they gave Donald Trump $2 billion in free airtime. That's not exactly freezing him out, right? So you can't really lay on these kids some somehow addled view when it was leading Republicans that were basically saying all those things
well, I'll submit
about
to
him.
you
Forget
that the
anything
kids
Hillary
aren't
Clinton said.
zeroed in on what's going on in the debates or in the micro of political science. They're hearing things. But these kids, and I'd love to talk to some of them, these kids have no idea about what the other side is experiencing. Why 60 million people said, you know what, had enough of this. And believe me, it was a repudiation of Barack Obama. It wasn't just a repudiation of Hillary Clinton. It was like, we don't feel part of this country anymore. How many times have I gotten a letter that said, where's my country gone? Now, that may be legitimate or illegitimate based upon your political point of view, but it's real. And that's what I articulated. Mr. Nixon, last word, go.
The other thing about these kids is, you know, you think now if a child grew up, 8 years ago, if they've grown up over the last 8 years, for most of their lives that they knew what was going on, Barack Obama was president. So they have kind of a certain expectation of the way things are to be regarding inclusion. And I think now they're afraid because they don't know anything else, and they've been afraid and scared by a lot of people.
Fear is legitimate. I understand that. But the other side is not giving any precedence at all in schools and academia or anything like that. Gentlemen, we appreciate it.